Hi everyone, welcome to Understanding the Key Changes to FIFA Disciplinary Code 2019 edition. Sorry, we've had some technical issues at the start, so apologies for the late running. We just had some connection issues and we wanted to make sure we had that right before we started. I'll run through the quick introduction just so we can get straight into it. Hopefully we don't have any technical issues. If we do, we shall persevere and you'll be able to watch and participate afterwards. So for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Sean Cottrell. I'm the CEO and founder of LawInSport. My role today is I'm not one of the facilitators, and the facilitator is to facilitate a discussion with Carlos around the changes to the FIFA Disciplinary Code. Our speaker today is Carlos Schneider Salvadore. Carlos, thanks for joining us. So, Carlos, for those who don't know, Carlos used to work at UEFA, and now he's currently FIFA Head of Disciplinary and Head of the Secretariat of the Investigatory Chamber for the Ethics Committee. The background for today, so if those of you who don't know, LawInSport is an information hub and global community, and our purpose is to help people understand about the legal issues in sport, and particularly provide expert commentary and analysis. We've been doing a recent series of webinars to help engage more with our wider audience globally, and also give people an opportunity to participate in interactive sessions. It's gone down particularly well. We did one on legal issues in African football last week and one on player contracts. The format of today's webinar is going to be that Carlos is going to give a presentation, presuming we can get the technical issues sorted. He's going to give a presentation. He was going to take questions throughout. There's a couple of ways you can ask questions. You can either, for those of you who are not familiar with using GoToWebinar, you can either type in questions and I'll pick them up and moderate them, or you can raise your hand. So there's a sign that looks like a hand. You can raise your hand. I'll come to you and open and turn your mic on so you can ask a question. So I hope that all makes sense.
So first of all, I'm very thankful to you, Sean, and also to LawInSport for having invited me for this event. It's my first event in a webinar, so I'm very excited, and it's like entering the something that I have no idea how it works, or a new environment for us. For me, it's a challenge, and I hope I can face it reasonably well. So. What we were talking when you invited me to this presentation was to give a little bit of an insight of the new FIFA Disciplinary Code, and then I realized that yesterday we also published but we announced the enforcement of the new code of ethics. So this is why I also incorporated to this presentation this bit, also because ethics and disciplinary have many things in common, and also the changes implemented in the code of ethics have a strong connection with those incorporated with the new disciplinary code. So I will start as they always say with the beginning. So why a new disciplinary code, and why the change? So everything narrows down to the idea of our president Infantino for his vision of FIFA 2.0. So what was that? It was, okay, let's put FIFA again at the forefront of innovations, of transparency, of an efficient management of the football-related matters. And then when I came in October, but I started with disciplinary in November. When we were discussing internally with Mario Galabotti, who is the director, and also with Emilio Garcia, who is the chief legal. So we had already a project with a disciplinary code in our hands, But there was a big issue there. It was that first we recognized that that this first draft was a little bit old-fashioned in the sense that it was more at least it was also my view on that, is that more a reaction to what has happened shortly, rather than an integral approach to the disciplinary code. That means that if one looks back in time, you will see that in the last 15 years there haven't been any significant changes to the disciplinary code. It has always been like little amendments and a little bit adapting to what has come, but not really like, okay, let's think about that, let's make a thorough analysis of what is needed now and what should be necessary future. And this is how we started. And it's also true that our background of Emilio and I at UEFA was a little bit also this one, like, okay, let's work for football, but let's make something different. Let's really start with something strong because it's needed. No? That was also what we did at UEFA, and this is also what we try to do here. And this the result is what we have in our hands. It's a completely new instrument with a very innovative approach, I think. At least this is what we are telling ourselves. And then it's also an instrument that it's not something done only by FIFA. It's something done in cooperation and coordination with all the stakeholders, and it includes the member associations, but also the confederations and other stakeholders like FAIR or ECA or Pro. So in a nutshell, I would say that an important element to take this challenge and to change the code as it was again a little bit from where we were, Emilio, Mario, and I, where we already implemented all these changes in another confederation.
And so, Carlos. Can I ask you a question? So you're basically saying then well, I think it's quite interesting actually. Your experience from being at UEFA with doing consultations and more stakeholder management, because I know at UEFA there's quite a did quite a lot of work with that, with financial fair play and other matters, in terms of going out and speaking to the different representatives of different stakeholder groups. That did inform when you came to FIFA. That was something that you've tried to take forward. Is that correct? Is that so?
Exactly. I think that having that was a very important was this experience that we all had. It Emilio, Mario, because he was also a member of the appeal committee, and I with that a little bit for us was extremely important that the addressees of this code are involved, and obviously some of the changes that we will go through afterwards came directly from them, not from us. What I think it's also important here is that this innovative approach, also a simplified approach, was also a little bit of a decision-taking process, in the sense of, okay, let's do that, and because it's innovative, but it's also something new, and like it's the same meaning, but it needed someone to take those decisions, and I think we made the perfect combination, the three of us, and it resulted in for us in a very good and clarify and clear legal instrument.
Again, this is, I think there's some interesting lessons there probably from some of your member associations and national associations, that if they've got something that's a bit unwieldy, maybe creating a new piece of regulation might be easier than trying to amend the old one, maybe.
Yeah, well, there was it. So if we go to the changes to the next slide, there we can see how we adapted, and one of the big things was the length. You know, when we came to FIFA and we got the draft in our hands, so the thing is, it was not a shorter version of the code, was even a lengthier one. So I think this first exercise was very important for us because at the end of the day, someone needs to be able to read the code. And when I say someone, it's not a lawyer, it should be anyone. And this for us was very important, that it's a clear and very concise legal instrument. So now we started to cut those things we thought that was either too difficult to or have been explained in a very difficult manner in the previous code, but also other notions that in football are completely known by everyone. Like one of the big surprises that we had was the fact that a yellow card was an article with its own definition. So if you are in the football world, you should know what a yellow card is. You don't need to have this explanation. So and in other things, they were like, okay, at the beginning you had this definition, and then at the middle again the same definition, and then so you got like 3-4 articles to explain the same thing, when we thought that only one with a good structure was necessary. So if you see the length of the code, it has been cut off to more than the half of the number of the articles. That makes the code a little bit easier to read. And also the organization. Again, we had some, when we look into the previous code, we had the impression that some things didn't match there where they were, and what we tried a little bit is also to give some clarity on that when someone needs to take the code, okay, he goes to the index and says, this is the only thing I have to know about the red card, the suspension, and so on. So you go directly to this article and don't expect any surprise in the future, like you didn't mention the other article. So these things were very important for us. So then we go to another change, is also the fact that we consider that the stakeholders are very relevant for us, in the sense that we are not a profit-making company. Therefore, the procedural costs, we completely cut them. So the first instance is free of cost, and then we also reduce the cost to appeal. So, but this is, again, it's a little bit back to our background. I think also back to where we came, which is a little bit the idea that our experience, not only at another confederation, but also in associations like the experience of Emilio, the long experience of Emilio and Mario, also warrant us to the fact that, okay, if we are open in disciplinary proceedings, what we shouldn't is also make the people pay the cost of these proceedings, because it's out of the will to start those proceedings, and therefore we consider that there was no justification to really make them pay for the costs of something that we start. That's not the same case for the appeal committee, it is the party who is appealing, and therefore they are triggering the whole process.
Right.
But we also considered that 3,000 francs for that was too much, because not everyone has the money. Then finally we go to the part of transparency, where we include also the option of having public hearings. So this is, I also think, important, because the length, the procedural cost, and the transparency are like indicators of our approach. Like, first, we need to clarify the things, make it simpler. Second, we need also to think about the needs and the situation of our stakeholders. And then third, the transparency. Transparency for us is extremely important. That would have another step forward in September, where we will publish our legal.com webpage, where you will find everything you need on the sessions, jurisprudence, rules, norms, circular letters. So, and that for us in this, it's also important, public hearings. Public hearings subject also to the request of the party.
Sorry, Carlos, interrupt you. I was just going to say, I think that's very welcomed. I'm not speaking on behalf of people from, at least from Law in Sports perspective and others. It's very welcome to see that more the one you're being more transparent, but also particularly the public hearing point. Because I think a lot of the people who are bound by these rules at certain times would have loved in the past to have public hearings where if that option was available. So fantastic. Sorry, I interrupted you. And by the way, sorry, just to know that we've got a bunch of questions, but we've already had, so we've got a whole bunch of questions, but I'll wait for the appropriate moment. So thank you everyone who is submitting questions in the background. I'm taking note of them, and at the appropriate point, I'll come in and ask you. So Carlos, I can assure you we've got a number of questions already. So
okay, no, I'm completely happy to have questions on that. So this is no issue. But what I need to note is that we will have the option of public hearings, but always subject to the request of the party. This is important, and only in doping and match manipulation. So this is now how it is now, and maybe in the future we open a little bit more the scope. But and
is that both parties, or sorry, so Carlos, does that have to be both parties, or does it have just to be the party that so the say the player or coach request?
Yeah, well, at the end, the accused party, because it's doping would be the player, and match manipulation, whatever, individual, or even it's the accused party, and then it's the chairman to decide also if this is convenient.
Excellent.
Yeah. So then we move forward to the big changes, or at least what we consider as fundamental changes in this code, in this new code, which is the fight against match manipulation here. And this is a little bit, I think it can be good or bad. It's the way you see it. What was it's how you came in. It's sometimes you are one is working with notions. It's so much time that someday you just lose a little bit the perspective, in the sense that with match manipulation, for me, and this is my personal experience, it was a little bit surprising to see that depending if the match manipulation took place off the field of play or in the field of play, there were two different judicial bodies competent. So if it's off the field of play, it was the Adjudicatory Chamber of the FIFA Ethics Committees, but if it's in the field of play, it was the Disciplinary Committee. So I try my best really to understand that different approach, but honestly, and this is what I say, maybe it's good, it's bad, but I couldn't. So it was my understanding, and also from those that we have drafted the code, that match manipulation makes no sense if it's only off the field of play. So match manipulation is match manipulation. It's a manipulation of a match. So it has to have some links with with on the field of play action. So for me, it was difficult to make this differentiation, and we just went for it. And it was apparently well received by the stakeholders, by the confederations, the associations. Obviously, we already knew that in the case of UEFA, they would accept it. We didn't know for the rest, and it was very welcome, this change. From our perspective, was a little bit of a reasonable change, and I will put it this way. So it was not only that two different judicial bodies were competent for match manipulation. It was also at some point when we changed the code of ethics last year, that the limitation of prosecution was different, meaning that if it was the disciplinary committee to decide, there was no limit for prosecution, but if it was the adjudicatory chamber, there was 10 years. So in a matter like match manipulation, we conceived that we needed a common approach. And what was even more surprising was that when we all were also discussing with the members of the chambers of the judicial bodies, they also agreed to that. It was like something in the air, and we all knew that there was a little bit confusing, and then just this option came, and everyone was agreed to that. So I think that it's a big improvement also because from a legal perspective, not to give only one legal approach to one single topic, then different with different chambers. So I think that clarifies a little bit the process. And now the only body competent to deal with match manipulation is the disciplinary committee.
And presumably, if there's information that's relevant to the ethics committee, of course they could pass that information over. Is that correct? How would that work in the sense of
So internally, so obviously, first we need to see how that, because we have an idea. We never had this situation, but we foresee that the situation will be okay if it's match manipulation. Then, and it comes to the knowledge of the investigatory chamber. So this information would then be provided to the disciplinary committee to decide on it.
Great.
Obviously, match manipulation involves other conducts that have also like an approach, meaning like corruption, offering gifts, bribery, maybe even, I don't know, misuse of misappropriation, and those are ethical matters. So then we'll see who is taking over, who thinks has the best right to decide, because at the end of the day we are all FIFA and the decision will be taken by FIFA. But it's a situation that we will face in the future, and then we'll see. We will know case by case. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. No problem. So if we move forward to the next change, big change, I would say, substantial change is our fight against racism. So this one is something that for me it's quite let's say fantastic. First, because we changed the scope, the definition, the content, and the disciplinary measures. So it's a renovation, more or less, of the approach, which was already a strong approach, but we opened a little bit the scope, meaning that in the past there was there was a gap because homophobia, for instance, was not included within the scope of the discrimination provision, and now it is. So, and not only that, it's any kind of discrimination, and by that we just open for future circumstances and where we could add, because FIFA obviously was against any kind of discrimination, but was bound by the legal situation. And we got cases where it was where the judicial body was saying, yeah, it was a case of homophobia. It is homophobia, but we cannot act with the article corresponding to discrimination. Now now this has ended, and now we have a proper definition, not only for the situations of the past, but also in the situations in the future that are unknown. So change in that is also that the match is automatically forfeited if the referee decides to abandon. So this is like that, then it's a matter to discuss in the disciplinary proceedings and so on. But if the referee abandons the match will be declared forfeited after obviously the three-step procedure. And then here comes innovations, and this is exactly where we are a little bit excited. It's that we are incorporating something which is extremely new. I have to say that this notion didn't came from us, came from one of our stakeholders, and I think it is a very relevant one. Is the written victim impact statement. We saw, for instance, in the UK, there were like some alleged, well, I would say racist abuses against players, colored players, and then suddenly they felt like, okay, so because the jurisprudence said, okay, if you're a victim, you're not party at the, you cannot participate at the disciplinary proceedings, even though you are the victim receiving like a racist abuse. And this is something we try to face. We try to contest, to change from the previous regulations by providing the victim the right to participate in the disciplinary proceedings. I think this is extremely important. I think it's important for the victim that he or she feels like a little bit more covered by FIFA. And let's see where this will bring us. But I think it's a legal instrument already used in other. It comes, I think, from the common law. And let's see in the scope of sports law how this could work.
I think it's a very welcome change again. Like, I think there's something that we've seen on domestic levels, both in the UK and across Europe and other places, that it's been a real difficult issue, particularly for players dealing with when they don't feel like they have any voice in a certain, when decisions are made without their input. So yeah, congratulations on this. I think it's a very positive step.
Yeah, we'll see what will happen in the future, but we are very happy with this new thing. And then something that was a little bit hidden, because it is part of the of one of the letters of Article 13. It's the implementation of a prevention plan. I think this is something that no one noted, but it's extremely important and also innovative. So now one of the disciplinary measures, it's more a sort of directive, is the fact that the parties will have to implement a prevention plan, which will be supervised and monitored by FIFA. So this is great, but this is great because it had effects in other particular examples, and it works. It's we had some parties, some responsible parties, and they have implemented the prevention program plan with the supervision and monitoring of FIFA, and it worked.
So we have a question from Hugo Paris. It might be something you don't want to answer, but I think there is an answer for this. It says, regarding the fight against homophobia, taking into consideration that homosexuality is illegal in Qatar, and not only in Qatar, in other countries as well, or they've got laws banning homosexuality, does that present a problem with the World Cup taking place in that country? I guess it's the same with like hosting this is a wider discussion around human rights, I guess, as well, just more broadly, which is, you know, how do you deal with something like this?
I can answer that, but what I can answer is from a perspective. I cannot answer from a, so I think that homophobia has this legal side, and then obviously has this other part with more like FIFA in Qatar with in a very specific legal context. So if I stick to the to disciplinary proceedings, homophobia is not accepted and won't be accepted also during the World Cup. So if we have an abusive chance with a homophobic chance or whatsoever during the World Cup, that would be sanctioned for sure, because it's because what we apply first as a priority are our rules and regulations.
Great, thank you.
This is a answer.
I think it answers the answers the question. I'm just trying to see. It's got some other questions. Just trying to make sure that there's none we've missed off. I think they're all coming on to the later parts. My question is going on. Yeah, I think they're coming on to the later part, so we'll continue. And then we've got about 6 or 7 questions there. If there's one that I've missed that's relevant to previous ones, please just message back and we'll pick it up. I don't think there are any of this. Sorry, Carlos, back over to you. So moving on to financial justice.
Yeah, financial justice. Here, 3 very important changes. Well, not changes, a little bit. It's more adaptations to reality. The first one is obviously a big update on FIFA's approach. That means that FIFA will enforce ordinary CAS awards. This is in the scope of what was the Article 64, this enforce of decisions. Now it's Article 15. And what happened there is that the previous system was that first you have to go through through FIFA's internal remedies, then you could go to CAS. And then once this decision has not been enforced, then you can come back to FIFA. So what is the change here is that you can go directly to CAS, and we will enforce those ordinary CAS awards. So it's a big change in the sense also for, I think also for our stakeholders, that they don't need to spend to pass through the whole the whole way until they get this decision from FIFA to enforce those CAS awards. And I think this is a very important change. Obviously, it doesn't mean that all the CAS ordinary awards that have been decided until now will be enforceable now by FIFA. It means that they will only be enforced those where the procedure has started as of the 15th of July.
Right, great. I've got a question from on this point from Philippe Pestana, and I apologize in advance. As most people will probably gather, if you've ever tuned into one of these webinars or come to one of our events, my pronunciation of any other name, English or otherwise, is always incorrect, pretty much. So apologies if I say anyone's name's wrong. He says, my question is about the enforcement of ordinary CAS decisions by a FIFA disciplinary committee. Would that include decisions in favour of intermediaries against clubs or players?
Well, so it's a tricky question, this one, because intermediaries, they are not, the competence has been delegated to the member associations. So we are not now competent to deal with intermediary cases, but it could be that in the future it might be. So if at some point we get this competence back, this is not part of my knowledge or my scope. It's of duties, but in case that would happen, then they would be under our umbrella, and we would enforce also those CAS awards. But
there's changes coming. There's changes coming on this, aren't there? There's potential quite like in terms of in September with the changes to the transfer system, there's probably a whole bunch of things that are still in discussion at this moment in time. So I'd imagine, I don't know, but I imagine that this is all part of the discussion. I know at least I know from agents that it's something that they're very keen to have from one of the events we went to the European football agents last week. Okay, thank you, Carlos. So that was that one. So we've done that. Okay. Do you want to continue? I don't think. Oh, right. Okay, hold on. We've got. Wow. Okay. Here's from. This is from Singh Ho Jonathan IP. Well, they're putting themselves down. Given the powerful strength and extensive reach of FIFA's regulatory function and FIFA's current emphasis on transparency, would you agree that the involvement of stakeholders, in particular the players and supporters, in the drafting process would be important in the future? It goes about democratic stuff, and then yeah. Anyway, yeah. So do you think now I'm not sure how maybe it's good to explain how that stakeholder consultation works at the moment and how it may evolve going forward. Thank you.
Well, it is important, and it was important. So all the changes that we made here was with the I wouldn't say consent, but with taking into account the ideas, the approach, the concerns of our stakeholders. Meaning here, the players with FIFA, the clubs with ECA and other associations of the kind, the leagues, well, and other stakeholders for instance, in our battle against racism. So for us, and this is extremely important for us, is that FIFA, it's an association of associations, and in those associations are the member associations, but also the players and the other officials. So we take into account all the comments, all the ideas, and this is the result of it. How that would evolve in the future, I don't know.
I think this is one of the more broadly as well in the sports landscape, not just football. I think this the evolution of true stakeholder engagement and how that process trickled down is a bit like how the committee structures work within FIFA and membership associations is going to constantly be reviewed and updated. As it becomes, again, as you said earlier, I think as you're moving to more transparency, people will understand better how these functions work, and hopefully that will help them either engage better or address any imbalances. I'm just going to say, Sunita Nicolau said, sorry, I'm confused. I thought by CAS Ordinary Awards, the new code referred only to intermediary cases, because all other cases between players, associations and clubs will still need to go through the FIFA procedures. Correct. Is that correct or not? So just slightly confused on that. Do you want to clarify that point?
Well, now we are entering to the other scope of my. Well, I'm not the head of transfers, but if you read the Article 15, which I have the English version, I have it anywhere here. So the Article 15 is saying that anyone who fails to pay another person of FIFA a sum of money in full or part, even though instructed to do so by a body or committee or an instance of FIFA or a CAS decision, financial decision, or anyone who fails to comply with another final decision, non-final decision passed by a body or committee or an instance of FIFA or by CAS. So that involves all CAS decisions. Ordinaries, meaning that there was no appeal, there was no previous decision on that case, and non-ordinary decisions in the sense of appeal decisions. So this is the normal ones coming from the FIFA dispute resolution chamber. So that means that that also depends, I would say, from the from the transfer regulations, if they are obliging the parties to pass through their own system, but also for the other ones, the ones that are not directly going through the system. So in principle, the idea was that we are enforcing the appeal ones, the ones coming from FIFA, but also the other ones, the ones not coming from FIFA.
Right. I hope that answers the question? I think it does, but if not, please just ask. And I think that answers Victor Arcando. I think that answers your one. Again, please clarify if not. For time, we're already running over because of the technical issues. So I think we're going to have to probably just carry on, and then we'll come back to some. So we talk about the other financial, justice points, and then we can come back to any other questions we have in a sort of rapid fire. Yeah, if you carry on.
Yeah. So then, big, I think, important change, or maybe it's just reflecting what was the approach, is that the standard disciplinary measure will always be a transfer ban. That means that we impose a transfer ban until the financial decision or the non-financial decision has been enforced. So why a transfer ban? Because we consider this as the more effective, and we don't consider it because we think that. It's because in practical terms it has always been like that. So cases having a transfer ban have been in decisions have been enforced more rapidly or fully and better than when, for instance, there was the implementation of pointed action. So, and it's also a little bit of a principle that sporting sanctions shouldn't be a rule, meaning that what FIFA does is not to affect, should not be to affect a competition, and therefore a transfer ban seems the reasonable and the most just the more justified sanction. Then
so
finally,
So you've got a question from Anish Tandulkar. I'm not sure if I understand this question correctly, so apologies. So relates to specifically overdue payables, right? So it's in relation to overdue payables where a registration ban is already imposed. If a decision not been adhered to by a club already imposes a registration ban because they're not paying players due to overdue payables, how would a registration ban under Article 15 run?
Again, sorry.
Yeah, I think Anish, you're gonna have to ask that question again. I'm not quite sure. Sorry, you're gonna have to ask that question again. Sorry, Carlos. I'm not sure I quite get it. Yeah.
It could be the situation where the club has already a transfer ban ongoing, and then it's a new case and it's likely to be a new transfer ban. It could be. So we were discussing that internally, and it looks like the most appropriate way to solve the issue would be eventually, but this is always a decision of the disciplinary committee. Here, what I'm giving is my personal approach, is that normally what you should is to fulfill the whole debt, meaning the previous one and the new one and the future one. And once you have done that, the transfer ban is done.
Right.
Before. So still be a transfer ban. So it will continue to be a transfer ban. The amount to be paid will be bigger.
So and then Adrian Bovet has said, is it not also an indirect measure against players to impose a transfer ban to a club? But I guess maybe I'm wrong in this, but obviously if people aren't playing, if they're not paying their players, it's probably in their best interest that a player doesn't go to that club. I guess that's outside of your control. So, but
I even could say that the players are are in principle supporting this because it's really effective.
Yeah, and so Jan Nee has just asked a question. If we can send the presentation, I'll upload the presentation to this afterwards, so you'll be able to access it. I think that's, Carlos, you're happy with that, aren't you? I believe we already talked about this, so that's fine. Should we progress forward? Sorry, I know we're overrunning. Sorry for those of you who have to drop off, but I think hopefully you can hang about for a bit longer. So should we move on?
Yeah, so then the next change on financial justice will be FIFA will act against the sporting successor of a debtor. But this, I want to make clear, this is not something new. It's just put in place in words. It's already something that FIFA was doing, but sometimes, well, not sometimes, the big issue here was how do we define the sporting successor? So what we're providing the stakeholders is those elements that will be taken into consideration to consider someone as the sporting successor of the debtor. So that means that we have a debtor, someone buys the club, but still buys also the debts.
Yeah. Right. Brilliant.
Okay.
Legal aid, which is an important one.
We move forward to the last. Yes, legal aid. So for the first time, we will implement a system to provide support to those individuals having financial problems, because we assume that not everyone is Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi, or these top professional players, and it's mostly the main part of the players are not within this range of salaries, and this is what we want. We want to help those individuals to have the same opportunities as others that have like a better financial situation. So what it comprehends is that we will pay the costs of the proceedings. We will also pay the travel and accommodation, but also any other expense that is connected to the procedure, like witnesses or the call for experts. So how the procedure will go, this is something that will come by the beginning of September with a circular letter where we are already working on it. But the main idea is that, okay, if someone wants to request that legal aid, first, this individual needs to request it, and second, he needs or she needs to prove that the financial his financial situation is not appropriate or adequate or reasonable. So it will be the FIFA Secretariat to decide on that, who is getting the legal aid, and this decision cannot be appealed. It's also true that you might have the financial means, but in the middle of the procedure, you realize that you don't have those financial means, so you would be also allowed to request that further, even if that has been rejected before. So other interesting changes, and with that we'll finish with the disciplinary code.
Carlos, just got one question on the sporting successors point. Lauzels Hadjiment, no, apologies because your name's not fully coming up on the slider here. Sporting successors, do regs apply on previous cases before the enactment of the new regulations? Hello? Can you hear me, Carlos?
Sorry. Yeah, now again. Sorry.
Do on the sporting successors, do the regulations also apply on previous cases before the enactment of the new regulations? So does it have historical? Is it being applied to historical cases? I guess is what they're asking.
Well, there is That means ongoing, so previous cases already decided.
Right. Yeah. Ongoing cases, I presume, because I'm presuming, decided cases are decided.
I can again.
I said I'm presuming they mean about ongoing cases.
Excuse me.
I think they mean about ongoing cases.
But then we, yeah. But then I think this is a difficult question to answer. It's because it's not only that we have previous cases. We have cases already decided. Then we have new cases. Then we have ongoing cases on, let's say, clubs where there was already a decision. So it's a new case on a club where it was already, let's say, decided that it wasn't a sporting successor. So I think here we should apply the rule of law, obviously, and first, it's the disciplinary committee. This is something that I need to remark. It's not us, it's not FIFA, it's not the Secretariat to decide. I'm just a lawyer and not a very good one. But
I don't know.
but I would say that that here what we should apply is the law. So if it's a case which is sort of res judicata, it's very difficult afterwards to come back where you have the same elements to bring forward to change a decision that has been already taken against or in favor of a club. Then for the new cases, the new article applies. For the old cases, I would say also that the new article applies because, as I said at the beginning, this was already the practice of the disciplinary committee, and we just reflected that practice in the new code. But obviously,
sorry, and then coming on to just because of time. Sorry, Carlos, just because of time, I'm thinking that I know you got a lot to get through here. Maybe we have to do a part two. One of the other questions on legal aid was, can clubs apply for legal aid?
In principle, the idea is that the legal aid is given to individuals.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we've done that. I'm just conscious of time, and I know you've got more to get through. Sorry, my bad. One question we had was I think this is what you're saying, to be part of a circular later on in the year, but how are the pro bono lawyers selected? I'm sure many of the people who are tuned in are lawyers, will be keen to be pro bono counsel. How is that process? Is that going to be part of the legal website, the FIFA legal website?
The process first, we will issue a circular letter with all the contents, the requirements, and also opening the procedure. That will be published in the webpage for everyone willing to apply, but certainly with some contents again and requirements. It's not that every lawyer will be able to apply, because the purpose here is that we want those having financial problems to have the best possible defense.
Absolutely.
Even though it goes against our own interest, but
we've seen this. Well, this is one of the problems with the legal aid and anti-doping that often, can happen. That lawyers are brought in quite last minute on, for free. Generally in the UK, it's definitely the case. Brought in for free. They don't happen to run a case without being equipped well enough. Not necessarily themselves technically, but is in terms of the resources and time and everything else. So I think again that's a welcome approach. Shall we move? I'm just thinking about time. Shall we move on to the next part so we can cover some of the other questions, and then if that's okay with you, and then we can talk also about some of the code of ethics changes. But I think we've got about 6 different questions. You can probably tackle them quite quickly, I think. But hopefully. Okay. I told you there'd be lots of questions. You didn't believe me. I said there'll be lots of questions. But was there anything you wanted else to? Is there anything else you'd like to cover off on the legal aid point, or before we move on? Or
no, I think I covered everything.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And then you've also documented some other interesting changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's two changes. I think it's interesting, maybe not that important as the other ones, but it's still interesting. So it's ruling at the request of the accused party. This is something which it's sort of, okay, we have a disciplinary procedure, and we have, for instance, a club. The club is saying, okay, I am responsible for that breach, but I propose that the sanction is X. I don't know, like 10,000 or whatsoever. So this is always an option given to the clubs. But what we have now is something reflected in the disciplinary code, where the disciplinary committee must take that into consideration, and that it has a relevance for the procedure. It's not that, okay, it's just there, and the disciplinary committee will decide whatever it deems appropriate. Is that, okay, it's there, and if the disciplinary committee wants to decide otherwise, it would need to justify that. So it puts a little bit of pressure, even though it's not bounding the disciplinary code, but it's pushing a pressure, like, oh, you're against my proposal, you should at least give me the reasons why you are of another opinion. And then the second element is the proposal of sanctions. This is something that I think it's quite innovative, in the sense that it's the disciplinary committee, here the single judge, who will propose the sanction before even commencing the disciplinary procedure. So, for instance, we have a case of 5 fireworks, which is like a very standard case, and normally it's a 2,000 euros fine, for example. So the judge will propose that sanction even before commencing the disciplinary procedure. Will give like 6 days to the club, and then the club can say, okay, I'm okay with that, and that it would first not opening new disciplinary procedures. Second, it would not count as a record. So the next time that happen, it won't have the burden of this incident as a previous incident. So I think a little bit is of getting the people accepting, and the procedure, the things that are not going well. But it won't be all of them. Obviously, it will be on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, if there is a clean sheet of the club, that would give elements to implement this new thing. But if, for instance, we have a repeated offender, I don't think that he would be able to get this option. But it's something innovative, and also would ease a little bit the procedure.
Yeah, we've seen this in with regards to players on in rugby. They do a similar thing. That if you accept a sanction, you agree to the sanction without going to the hearing, then if you had an on-the-field incident, they did a similar thing. I think it's quite reduces the workload for a start, and it's more proportionate, I think, as an approach. So that's quite good. In my humble and uneducated opinion on the matter. Right, now, before we get on to the ethics, the code of ethics, shall we do quick fire on questions? So we do some of these questions. Do you have time? I'm conscious of your time. How are you doing on time?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, do you have time?
It's fine.
Yeah. So we have this comes to the code of ethics. So he's talking about the code of ethics. Okay. Abhishek Deshpande. Oh, I'm so sorry, Abhishek Deshpande. Regarding disciplinary code, Article 18 and Article 19, where the duty to report has been stated, his question is it a duty to report association with a person who has been sanctioned under the code? So basically, where does the duty of report? So basically, I think he's saying that under, I think it's under 19, is it? The duty to report? Under the duty to report, I guess, where does it apply? I think is the question more broadly.
Well, 19 is saying that should report immediately any violation or attempt to violate this code by any third party.
Well, okay.
So I would say that in this particular case, you don't need to report that if someone has already been sanctioned. It's only that what you need to report is if there was a breach, and just to raise up this.
Thank you. Victor Akando asked a question about legal aid. We've addressed that. Joseph Vandelos has asked a bunch of questions. Carlos, can you delineate between the jurisdiction of FIFA and the confederations in disciplinary issues, Articles 27? I think this is another question as well that Kelvin Ojimajin, I'm saying his name wrong as well probably, which is a disgrace because he's on our editorial board, as is Joseph. How far is FIFA willing to ensure that National Association implement? I think basically there's a bunch of questions around the relationship between these codes, the confederations and national associations, and how those interplay. Where does the balance sit?
Well, yeah. So I think what is important here is Article 2, scope of application, and this is like the starting. So it says this code applies to every match and competition organized by FIFA and to matches and competition in association football that do not fall under the jurisdiction of the confederation and or the associations, unless otherwise stipulated in this code. So this is as a first bit. So we go to the competitions. So that if it's not a FIFA competition, in principle, and this I want to remark, in principle, it's not FIFA's jurisdiction. So if it's, for instance, another type of match which is not falling under the confederate or association competence, then it's like a secondary competence we would be taking over. So that for the match, and this is in disciplinary cases, this is like the main rule. Like what we first are looking into is our own competitions. We go to paragraph 2, which is that says this code also applies to any breach of FIFA statutory objectives, as well as of any FIFA rule that does not fall under the jurisdiction of any other FIFA body. So this is the element of the statutory objectives, and that makes a little bit difficult the whole process, because statutory objectives, if you go to the statutes, it's quite broad. So here I would say that what we need is to balance, and this is what the disciplinary committee needs to do, is to balance their interest. So that means that that the interest of the association or the confederation to be independent and to decide on their own affairs, but also the interest of FIFA to decide on the wellness and the image and the reputation of football in general, not only FIFA but football in general.
And so presumably then there's some of the stuff you're going to talk about, so with the FIFA Code of Ethics is also going to influence some of this as well, right? Like in that regards, that the you know, because you're talking about the how the functioning of
the Code of Ethics, I think it's different. Here, right. It's like, okay, what is not FIFA is the association of the confederation, and I think it's also like I don't know. I'm a fan of Isaac Asimov and the robotic rules, no? And this is like the first rule is FIFA is FIFA, and what is the association as the association. The second rule would be, okay, what is a statutory objective if it doesn't affect the main and the core interests of the association and the confederation, would also be FIFA. And then finally, I would say that the FIFA is supervising that the wellness of football is respected everywhere. So all these three, let's say these three rules need to combine and need to be respected. And because then you have issues like match manipulation or doping, which are completely against the FIFA statutory objectives, but where there is eventually also a procedure going on internally, and these are things that we have to respect. I think it's something extremely important, because as I said before, FIFA is an association of associations, and if you don't respect your members, it's very difficult to work with them. So I think there needs to be a balance. Maybe in one case it turns out that it's FIFA, in another very similar case it turns out it's the Confederation jurisdiction. It's something that cannot be. It's not mathematics. I think
it's going to be interesting to see how
independent.
It will be very interesting to see how that evolves over time, as because you have questions about why one thing applies in one jurisdiction, not necessarily in the others. And then another question from Joseph was just a quick one, which was why Article 56. There's only 3 days declaration of appeal. Why the deadline for declaration of appeal is only 3 days? Do you think it might endanger the affected parties?
Well, this is something that has also already been applied by UEFA. 3 days. It's working days. So, for instance, if the deadline expires on a Saturday, it goes until Monday. So this first, it's 3 days, but that depends when you receive the decision. And I don't think so. Like I think that it's if you get the decision and you react, you have to react rapidly, and this is what it's all about in sports procedures. It's efficiency, that it's a fast procedure, because we have competitions and they may impact also the competition. And then once done the statement of appeal, you can always ask for an extension of your deadline. And so at the end of the day, it's just asking those who want to appeal to decide quickly, and then it's up.
Great. Okay. You're still there?
Even to withdraw the appeal if they found it.
Okay. And then we had a question from Diego Pascal that was around the relationship, which I think you've now outlined, between the cooperation between local federations and FIFA, etc. We probably could do a bit more analysis, but I think there's probably more to come. Well, you've said there's more to come on this, and it's not such a, I like the way you phrased that, not such a mathematical question. Then Alexander Kopos, which is not really something I'm not sure you're involved in the clearinghouse, but there was an update yesterday on this. But essentially he's asked what's the estimated time of delivery for the clearinghouse. But I think more relevant to you is will that be regulated by the disciplinary code? Is it envisaged that it's going to be?
I don't think so.
No. Right. Okay. Cool. Then
I don't. But it's something not, the clearinghouse is not under my scope of competence, and